Hey, welcome to The Connections Show, a weekly podcast all about the internet and the art of business networking. I'm Stan Relihan, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Joining me today is Vincent Wright from Hartford in Connecticut. Hello, Vincent.
Hello, Stan.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. How about yourself?
Very good. Now, it's 9 a.m. here in Sydney. What's the time there in Connecticut?
We have just after 7 p.m. here in Connecticut.
Right. And is the day finished for you yet?
Well, we've got at least another good 5 hours worth of work here.
5 hours?
Yes.
So I guess that's going to keep you busy till after midnight. Is that on your own or you're meeting with people?
I'll be meeting virtually with people.
So you don't actually have physical face-to-face interviews?
No, I don't hate anyone enough to show them my face.
Well, you may not have a choice in that. I see that LinkedIn has just recently gone a Facebook route and introduced a new feature where you can actually put pictures on.
Oh, yes. I may share my face with the LinkedIn crowd sometime in the not-too-distant future. Yeah,
well, you've got a great voice, as they say. You've got a great voice for radio, and the common insult with that is you've got a great face for radio.
Well, thank you kindly. I like to tell everyone that my looks license has expired.
Right. Well, your voice sounds good.
Thanks kindly.
Many of our listeners, particularly the more active LinkedIn members, would be familiar with you, either from being directly connected or through the many online networking groups that you operate.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little about yourself and the groups that you operate and what your agenda on that is.
Well, first of all, thanks very much for asking. Essentially, I currently operate under 3 roles. As a network moderator, I moderate my LinkedIn Power Forum, which I started about 2.5 years ago. I also am a recruiter, and that's something that, blame me if you will, but I still love it. I have some sort of genetic defect that makes me still feel quite good about recruiting. I love that. I have loved it for the past 20 years. I also am a job and career coach as well.
What do you find satisfying about being a recruiter?
It has to be meeting the people and making the match. And it's a mixture of those two things where you meet people, and I'm endlessly fascinated by the people that I have a chance to talk with, whether those people are IT professionals, sales professionals, CEOs, CIOs, CTOs. It's just so interesting to me once you have talked to them about the job description, finding out other aspects of their lives. And so you get a chance to hear living history and getting to know people and getting to know something about the chemistry that can help you to determine whether or not they are an appropriate fit for your client, and also whether or not you want to follow them in some other venue outside of the recruiting. And so I love the opportunity to get to talk to all manner of people. And I've met some truly interesting and fascinating people, very helpful people, and people who, some of whom have become my actual real-world friends over the past 20 years of recruiting.
Yes.
I also like the idea of helping my client company to find that hard-to-find person. They shouldn't pay us for finding someone who is an approximation of who they're looking for. They should pay us for helping them to find the key person that they need for their projects and for their companies, in my opinion.
You're talking to the converted here, because that is exactly my philosophy as well. In fact, that's why I describe myself in my LinkedIn profile as a neural networker.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a matter of numbers for me. I really do enjoy meeting with people and talking to them and sharing and exchanging ideas. And I find the stimulus that I get from talking to other smart people and hearing new ideas and new insights, that sets me off on new directions as well. And like you, the impact that you can have on people's lives is something one needs to take seriously, but when you can do that in a positive way, it's very rewarding. And I've made some very, very good friends, and probably some of my best friends have been the ones that I've actually been able to meet in that way and advantage the careers of. Well, that's very satisfying. And of course, as a headhunter, I usually get involved in jobs that are a little bit more difficult or a bit different to the standard run-of-the-mill jobs, and as a result, they are quite interesting to talk to people about. The other factor is, as you were saying, we don't get paid for finding approximations. We get paid for finding the best of the best. And because it is a relatively exclusive process rather than a numerical process, you are actually meeting a very high caliber of individual. And they have intelligent things to say, they've got new perspectives, and it's a machine that feeds upon itself.
Absolutely, and I think that brings into play the concept of serendipity. For instance, I received 2 phone calls today from people that I began recruiting in 1996. And I haven't talked to them that much in the interim, but it's just so interesting that they would call me on the same day, both with 2 separate types of offers that they wanted to extend to me based upon the recruiting work I had done with them in the mid to late 1990s. And so that's the other great benefit, the hidden value about recruiting that makes recruiting so addictive. When you see benefits over a protracted time beyond the particular paycheck that you receive for placing someone, you just don't know how that relationship is going to play out in the future. And so that's one of the things that keeps it attractive and fresh for me.
Right. Now, the purpose of this podcast series is to find and share examples with our listeners of how social networks can be used for business benefit. Perhaps you can tell us from your perspective how you're using social networks and online groups specifically to provide you with these opportunities and benefits.
Well, the way that I got involved in online networking was I got involved indirectly with Academy, something that I did not intend to get involved with. I liked the feeling of it about 4 years ago, and then from being on Academy, I heard people on that platform talking about this LinkedIn concept. And when I first looked at it, LinkedIn didn't seem to be that interesting to me, and then of course you hear a few iterations of it, and the next thing you know, you're paying a little bit of attention to it. And so you go the standard route, and you start the process of inviting your friends. Well, I started to invite my friends and noticed 1 or 2 of them getting pretty excited about it. And I also noticed another set of my friends who were equally confused. And so noticing the pattern of the confusion, I determined that rather than having to explain it one-on-one to each of my friends sequentially, that I would start a little Yahoo group to explain to my friends how LinkedIn worked or how I saw it working and how it could help me with my recruitment work. And thus, in February of 2005, I started a little group called My LinkedIn Power Forum.
Yes, of which I'm a member as well.
Well, thanks very much for enduring that.
Well, along with nearly 7,000 others, I think, so it's quite a large group.
Yes, it's just under 7,000 people now. Yeah, we've generated some fairly nice numbers there. The size of the group is a nice size group. When we've talked about just under 29,000, 30,000 messages in the past 2.5 years of talking. But what I like about that group is some of the stuff that happens off the group when people reach out to say, thank you, Vincent, or the group was very helpful, the group helped me to solve this problem that I otherwise may not have been able to see. And so I like the idea of social networking because it does something along the lines of what this wonderful group is championing in trying to bring together a group of people to write a book. It's called We Are Smarter Than Me.
An extension on the wisdom of crowds.
Exactly. I think it's wearesmarterthanme.org.
Right.
But the great thing, Stan, to me, the thing that really satisfies me and encourages me about social media is when you go out there and you see people in action answering questions with such facility in things that may have been bothering you or plaguing you for a very long time, answering questions about recruitment or business development or search strategies or communication issues. How do I express myself when I'm really, really upset about something with someone in my network? And seeing the crowd come along and give their opinion, give their perspective, give their insight on how to address those things. You see that, but cumulatively over a period of time, it has a benefit to you that's kind of hard to quantify because you know that you have improved in an area that you would not have improved in necessarily without the benefit of the crowd, without the crowd's opinion, without the crowd's involvement in helping other members of the group to solve their problems publicly, right in front of your face.
I guess that's what the whole Web 2.0 experience is all about, is harnessing the input of the crowd to actually affect the larger picture that we all then congregate to. So websites that are not just necessarily created by a central entity and impose rules or behavior or engagement from outside, but the users themselves deciding the content.
Absolutely. But in all respect to the platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and MySpace and the Academy and places like that, my maxim is to try to keep it simple. And that is to follow something that's an old bromide from our childhood, or at least from my childhood, and that is, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Mm-hmm. If I'm on LinkedIn and LinkedIn's platform has a dictum that you shouldn't network with people that you don't know, I really do try to follow that. And I don't invite a lot of people to LinkedIn, but I do accept a lot of invitations on LinkedIn because I'm okay with people reaching out to me. I won't accept blindly. If someone doesn't match with me, if there is nothing in their profile, if the profile is empty, nothing is going to cause me to accept something that looks unhealthy to me. So I try to abide by LinkedIn's principles as much as I can. In other areas, I've grown a network comparable to the size of my LinkedIn network in approximately a week. It's more open. So I'm in another place. I'm not in Rome. I'm in another place. And so I behave a little bit differently. That doesn't mean that my core behavior is going to change. My core behavior is about professional networking with a purpose in mind. And so as long as I can keep focused on my purpose, I don't mind adjusting to the environment, to the culture that I happen to find myself in. If I'm in London, I'll adjust to the way London is, but the essential Vincent is going to be the same thing, irrespective of whether it's London or Paris or Rome or Egypt or Hartford, Connecticut.
In fact, that's how you and I met. I've been a member of your group for some time, but I hadn't reached out and hadn't invited you. Mm-hmm. And then it was, I think someone had made a comment on the podcasting that I was doing that you'd make a good guest. Mm-hmm. And I used the official LinkedIn process of an introduction request. And my request was, "Hi, Vincent. We're both on LinkedIn. We're not connected up directly yet, but I'd like to get in contact with you. Are you receptive to connecting?" And it was your response to that saying, "I like your approach. Mm-hmm. Let's mm-hmm. connect." Mm-hmm. So that one is able to still expand a network and get to know people that you haven't met yet through the LinkedIn process. But it's better to do it via an introduction request than perhaps just by a blind invitation.
Absolutely. But I also think, too, Stan, that we have to keep ourselves focused on the essence of what we're doing on those platforms. It's not just for invitations for the sake of invitations, but invitation for the sake of a business purpose or a social purpose or a career purpose.
Exactly. Now, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because on your LinkedIn Power Forum, you've got 5 tips there. Mm-hmm. The first one is don't build in the dark. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is don't build without a vision. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is don't build too fast nor too slow. Mm-hmm. Number 4, don't build without a written plan. Mm-hmm. And number 5, don't build without profiting. That last one is very interesting because all of the others are academic mm-hmm. and could easily be applied to any of the other social networks. But what I'd like to see if we can explore a little bit further is how we can actually use social networking platforms, whether it be LinkedIn or some of the others that are available, how we can use this new phenomenon as a business tool.
That last one, number 5, was included in that list specifically for this guy named Vincent Wright. He needed to be reminded of it frequently. That's why I added it to the homepage. Sometimes I think that we codify laws to share with our networks, but we also write them for ourselves as well. And I know that I love 1 through 4. But I also know that 1 through 4 doesn't do much good, and it also falls in on itself unless you add profit to the mix.
Of course, because time is money, and you need to make sure that you're investing your time appropriately.
Absolutely. I don't think that we need to be crassly or garishly profit-centered, but we also can't afford to forget it, because if we do not get enough profit out of our work, it weakens our opportunity to work even more. Exactly. Because we have to go out scraping for dollars in order to keep going, when we should, as healthy human beings, as healthy business people, as healthy networkers, we should also be very comfortable in saying it's okay to make some money out of this. And also very maturely and very matter-of-factly saying that money is part of what we're doing here. It's not just a philosophical thing. It's not just a theoretical thing. It's not just a book-centric thing. This is part of our real lives. To be doing this network, even though we're working virtually, it still is part of my life that I'm investing in networking with all these people. I like to tell my personal friends that I've gotten over my allergy to money. I can roll in it. It doesn't hurt at all. It doesn't seem to cause me any degradation in my values by having some of it. Now, with respect to the how of using LinkedIn to get money, I think that it starts with how you introduce yourself to the LinkedIn platform. And that introduction comes with your profile. On your profile, you have to tell people a little bit about what you're about. That is a great opportunity. Really, before LinkedIn, we really didn't have a great mechanism for introducing ourselves to such a vast audience. And so I think that's one of the things that makes me still happy about LinkedIn, that with a profile, if you argue your profile the right way, it helps people to find you without your having to do all the searching all the time. So business comes to you. Business came to me on Sunday. Business came to me twice today as a result of someone looking at my profile and saying, well, wow, he doesn't seem like that frightening of a recruiter or that frightening of a coach. I think I might pick up the phone and call this person. So for me as a coach, as a recruiter, as a quasi-professional networker, I think that one great way to use LinkedIn to help you get business is to make sure that your profile is okay. That doesn't mean that your profile has to be perfect. That would be a waste of time to try to perfect it.
That's the beauty about what the Internet is all about, because on the Internet, nothing is ever finished.
Right.
I remember when I was in the advertising industry, we would have clients who would come along and they'd engage an annual report or a publication be made, and you'd go to a great deal of time and trouble and effort, and you'd create this magazine or a book, and you'd put it out there, and heaven forbid that there should be a typo in it. But once it's out there, you can't recall it, you can't do anything with it. There are many, many thousands of copies out there, and quite often they quickly date. The advantage of a website is that it's constantly updated. LinkedIn, for instance, if they'd waited till they'd got it perfect, it would never have been launched. It's continuously adding new features. It's a work in progress, and so your profile should be a work in progress. As you grow with more experience, more ideas about how to use it and how to use the network more effectively, you may have a different philosophy about how you want to project yourself online. And that's what hopefully these interviews that I'm doing on these podcasts are going to be able to help our listeners learn from the experiences of others, tips, tools, techniques that they can use and apply to themselves, to their own lives, to their own business activities, to their own profiles, whatever.
The one thing about typos on the profile, I think it's fairly important to try to reduce those as close to zero as you can.
Oh, yes, of course. I think that's absolutely important. But the thing about a publication is that once it's out there, if you've made a mistake, you can't recall it. The advantage with a profile online is that it is correctable. If you find something and you have made an oversight, you can go and fix it. But I do agree with you. It is important that in projecting oneself on LinkedIn and any profile, that you do so as professionally as possible. And the first way to do that, of course, is to use correct language if you can. Often we have people for whom English is not a first language, but certainly running a spell check, rule number one.
If English is not your first language, network with someone whose first language is English. Ask them to help you with your language, to review it. It's okay to network for that purpose also. The point that I wanted to try to share with your audience, though, about the typos is that from a searching perspective, as a recruiter, if I'm going out searching for a project manager and you misspelled project manager, yes, and I have seen that happen, or if I'm going out to search for your specialty and your specialty is mistyped or misspelled, then that rules you out of my searches automatically. And so that's the point for typos that I want to share.
Absolutely. A very important point. Now, we're actually nearing the end of our interview time slot. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and insights with our listeners.
Thank you kindly for inviting me.
All right, tremendous.
Okay, thanks, Stan.
Bye.
Okay, bye for now.
You've been listening to The Connection Show on the Podcast Network with your host, Stan Relihan. Stan is President and Chief Executive Officer of Expert Executive Search in Sydney, Australia, and one of the top 50 most connected LinkedIn users in the world. You can view his online profile by clicking the button on the Connections website, or contact him directly at expertsearch.com.au. Please show your support by leaving a comment, voting on Dig, and telling your friends and colleagues. Join us again next week or subscribe to the show on iTunes. Thanks for listening.